the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Every year, Ohio voters face an array of school funding issues, including renewals of basic operating levies. That's the case this year for the region's largest school district, Cincinnati Public Schools. And their campaign theme is, it's just a renewal. Issue 1 is a renewal of a levy passed in 2009. It will raise $65.2 million per year for 5 years. The tax will be levied beginning in 2015 and be available to the schools beginning in January 2016 for a 5-year period. Set at 10.26 mils, property owners will pay $307.92 for every $100,000 of valuation. Along with another levy that expires in 2019, this levy covers 25% of the school's general operating budget. To talk about the issue 1, the CPS renewal levy, I am joined by Mary Ronan, the superintendent of schools. Ms. Ronan's been superintendent since 2009 and began as an elementary math and science teacher with the schools back in 1976. And Laura Mitchell, the deputy superintendent, who heads a number of initiatives focused on quality. And in the past, it's been on focus on reforming low-performing schools. But this year, you've got a new responsibility, and we will get to that as we go along. Welcome to Newsmakers. Mary, welcome back.
Thank you.
This renewal, and your theme, as I said, is just a renewal.
And it doesn't raise taxes.
And it doesn't raise taxes. To put this in context, though, how much state funding did the Cincinnati schools as a local government entity lose a few years ago when Governor Kasich came in and balanced the state budget by cutting local government units? How much did you lose at that point?
There was a 5% cut from the state in the years 2010, 2011. In fact, now in 2014, we're just so happy that we're getting funding. The funding level from 2009 has been restored because the cuts really did hurt. But all the municipalities also suffered the same kind of cuts. We all were struggling during the recession.
Yeah. So, but there hasn't been, this doesn't make up for that,
No.
and there hasn't been any other levy that made up for that.
No.
So you've just had to adjust.
We are living on what we had back in 2009.
And Laura, there's been a lot of changes that have come down from the state at the same time, trying to encourage improvement of performance and quality of schools. One of them that was particularly out there, I thought, or it seems very clear, was the 3rd grade reading guarantee, that if a child cannot read at grade level in 3rd grade, they would be retained one way or another in 3rd grade, at least for reading or whatever. How has that worked out for the Cincinnati Public Schools?
Actually, we've worked really hard, especially with our early childhood department, to make sure that our kids are really ready for the 3rd grade guarantee, but not just ready for the 3rd grade guarantee, but really reading on grade level. We really want them to be able to read by the time they leave 1st grade. And so we did a revamp of that department, and it used to be an early childhood department that had a focus on pre-K and kindergarten. And so we thought about learning on a continuum, and so now our department focuses on pre-K through 3rd grade. And so there are a lot of things that we've put in place to make sure that our kids are truly ready to be able to read on grade level. There are different assessments that we've put in place, tutoring that we've put in place, as well as the superintendent decided to hire literacy specialists for all of our elementary buildings so that our primary students really have an opportunity to work on those skills that they have deficits in as it relates to reading.
You know, it seemed like such a draconian proposal, and it seemed like there was all kinds of predictions about thousands of children facing this and having, and then in the end, for the Cincinnati Public Schools, if I got this right, 97% of your students passed it.
That is correct. 97% passed. We have 3,000 3rd graders, approximately 3,000, and only about 68 youngsters were retained, and they truly were lacking in skills. And we had a lot of conversation with the parents of those children.
And when you retained them, does that mean they were retained for the 3rd grade for all subjects or just for reading?
Well, we got mixed messages from the Ohio Department of Education.
I have too, and that's why I'm trying to
concerning
clear it
that.
out.
The last we had heard is they're supposed to just be retained across the board, because if you can't read, you are going to struggle in science and social studies and even in math, because there's so many word problems. So they really said they really should be retained across the board, although I believe there was a little bit of flexibility, but we too got mixed messages.
Okay. In terms of, say, the last 5 years, what do you think are the most important things that the school system, has put in place that has improved the educational situation for students? The structural things that can be sort of instituted by the administration. What are the most important things? Not one or two that you think have really made an impact, Laura?
So I think our Turnaround initiative to turn around our lowest performing elementary schools has made a really big impact on the district as a whole.
And that was something you had a direct hand in, right?
Laura was in charge of our Turnaround initiative, yes.
So what did that really mean?
So that meant that for the 16 schools who were part of this initiative, we went in and we did reviews of those schools, and we looked at what was happening in those schools instructionally, and then we developed an academic program to significantly raise the student achievement of those schools. Another thing that we did, though, is that we sent our principals to leadership training, actually to Darton's School of Business Leadership Training with University of Virginia. And that really helped us with the leadership in terms of how to think differently and out of the box and not being afraid to take some risks and do some things differently. And the strategies that we put in place really aren't strategies for low-performing schools. They're strategies for outstanding instruction. And so what happened is we saw across the district some of our other higher-performing elementary schools started implementing the techniques that were being used in our 16 turnaround schools.
And how have those 16 turnaround schools done over the last 5 years? Have you seen significant improvement?
Yes, actually, the first couple of years of implementation of our strategies, we saw a 10% increase in reading and a 5% increase in mathematics across those schools. And more importantly, we saw the entire school culture change, and it became a place where excellence was an expectation for all of our students. And so it's actually been groundbreaking for the entire district.
Mary, in the context of the larger national discussion about education, schools, it's all about the core curriculum, you know, and implementation. And this can become a controversy. A few weeks ago, I had the two candidates for state school board, and some people want to turn around the commitment that Ohio made to that curriculum change. Where is Cincinnati School District in implementation and adoption of the new core curriculum?
Well, we're required by law to implement the Ohio New Learning Standards, which is what we're doing, just because we know that our youngsters need a more rigorous curriculum to be college and career ready, and all the testing will be around this new, more rigorous curriculum. So definitely we're implementing the new Ohio Learning Standards.
From an educator's point of view, do you find it problematic? Do you find that everything's coming from the top down in a way that's different than it has been in past years?
I would say so. There is a lot more regulation at the state level. In fact, with the whole EMIS system, they want every child's schedule in the computer. They track everything. It's a completely different world than, let's say, 10 years ago. In fact, I've had to double my staff just to keep up with all the demands of all the information that the state of Ohio wants from a district on any given day.
And do you think, is the state of Ohio demanding that additional data and information because they're being dictated to by Washington? Is that where that's coming from, do you think?
There's some of that with the testing, but I think the state of Ohio is very interested in tracking dollars on a daily basis, so it's a lot of state regulation also.
And how do you think that implementation of these new standards is really going in the classroom?
So our teachers are really required to teach very differently, and so quite honestly it requires a lot of professional development for our teachers. So just as a really quick example, in the past when a student was taking a reading assessment, they might have to read a passage and then be able to answer some questions, multiple choice questions, maybe short answer, extended response. with these new standards and new assessments, it will ask the student to read 3 different passages and then do a comparison of the text. So that's a very different skill set than reading one passage. And the new questions are also require the students to be able to go and identify specific evidence from the text, and it's not based upon your opinion or what you think or what you feel. And so that requires really a different teaching set of skills for our teachers. And so I think that we're still working through how to implement, but overall I think that it's going pretty well.
Okay, so the other question is, because it got brought up a lot in that discussion with the 2 candidates, is, are there just too many tests being given to students?
There's a tremendous amount of testing these days, and I think the educators really feel overwhelmed by it. And I think parents notice that school plays, musicals, a lot of those activities, I really think that holistically really give you a well-rounded education have been really cut out because of all the testing, getting ready for the test, and now making sure the technology to take the test is also there. So yes, I think we all feel that there's just way too much testing, but we're required to do it.
You do what you do.
You do what you do.
Is Cincinnati Public Schools on track with every other Ohio district? Are you ahead, or are you behind with implementing the standards?
Oh, I'd say we're ahead because yes, we're definitely ahead. But we've also had to put a lot of money into technology, because when the state did a paper and pencil test, they paid the money for the test. Now they're requiring the district. I mean, we have to spend $10 million in new technology just to get our children online to be able to take the test. So it's a definite cost shifting of costs that were at the state level that now have hit all 613 school districts.
You know, one of the things that has come in is a new initiative this year called My Tomorrow, and that's one of the things, Laura, and we have a little bit of video from the beginning of the school year this year, but that was one of the things that's really being pushed out right now, that this is your commitment this year, and you're in charge of this. In charge of the implementation. What's My Tomorrow?
So My Tomorrow is a high school initiative that we're extremely excited about, and it really builds upon some things that the superintendent put into place a couple of years ago. And one of the first things that she did 2 years ago is she transitioned the 7th and 8th graders to high schools to better prepare them for the high school experience. And so with My Tomorrow, we're starting at grades 7 and 8. We have some expansion at the upper grades as well, but it includes a revamp of the curriculum. So our students in the 7th and 8th grade, they're getting algebra much sooner and earlier. There's a real focus on vocabulary, which we know that our kids will be able to need to have those skills for the ACT exams that they take. We also have a playbook for our students to be able to log into, and it gives customized plays for them based upon their performance in class as well as on assessments. The really neat thing about it is that students are able to track their progress towards their goals, academic goals, but also some career interests. So all of our 7th and 8th grade students will and have already received a device, and so there's a one-to-one initiative. All of our 7th and 8th grade students have laptops that they're using, just so that we can actually move into what's current reality for many jobs there.
So a lot of, and one thread of this is getting the pipeline on career options, and not giving the impression that you either go to college or nothing. Right. But lots of other job opportunities out there.
Yes.
One of the other areas that Cincinnati Public Schools has really been seen, I mean, this is groundbreaking, but another innovative area is the community learning centers.
Yes.
And we've got a little footage from Euler, but they're in different forms in lots of your schools, and this is attracting national attention. So again, sort of putting you out front.
It is. Our community learning centers really provide wraparound services for our youngsters. We have health centers in 21 of our school buildings. We have 2 dental clinics. We have a vision center, because if children can't see, or if their vision's impaired, they don't do well in school. And a lot of our families really did not have a primary care physician and missed a lot of days of school going to the doctor, and oftentimes the whole family wouldn't come to school that day. Right now, with health centers in the schools, children have access to health care and dental services. So we're really trying to provide for the whole child and not just for their academics.
And if I understand that correctly, those are funded not by the school's operating levy, operational funds, general fund, but by third-party payers, right?
Yes, Dan, that is correct. We never could afford these services. We couldn't even afford our school nurses. But now Mercy Health, Deaconess, they're actually sending their nurse practitioners and their pediatricians into our building. We're providing the space and rent and utilities for them.
Okay, thank you very much for this information. I want to make sure to get more information about Issue 1, check out the levy website, which is justarenewal.com, or that's right, .com, and you can find out a lot more things.
It does
there.
not raise taxes.
It does not raise taxes. I have heard that theme somewhere before. Thank you very much for being here. Baseball's postseason has started, and the Chicago Cubs aren't playing again. Not winning the World Series since 1908, before Wrigley Field was created, the Cubs live under a curse. So what happens? Some year when the Cubs have a chance to kill the curse, join me after the break for an interview with a local novelist who plays out that scenario. It isn't pretty. Stay right there. The Chicago Cubs once again won't be in the postseason, extending their infamous streak of not winning the World Series to 106 years. Despite their history of frustration, loyal Cubby fans flock year in and year out to Wrigley Field, which opened when Woodrow Wilson was in the White House. Whenever it is that the Cubs do make it into the World Series, the stakes will be incredibly high for the fans. And in that pressure cooker environment, it will be hard to control the fanatics willing to do anything to make sure the Cubs come out the winners. That's the premise of a new novel entitled Killing the Curse by Cincinnati author Dennis Hetzel. I am joined this morning by Dennis, and Dennis is not only the author of this book, but he's also the executive director of the Ohio Newspaper Association.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, this is great. I noticed that on, I don't know, your LinkedIn site or something, this is also on your bucket list.
Yeah, you know, in my years as a reporter and an editor, I'd often been accused of writing fiction. But yeah, I think you can try relate to some of that. But this was my first real attempt at it.
Well, you know, a lot of historians try to write historical fiction, which I find almost always fails. This is a leap for somebody like you who's worked in newspapers, who's worked in reporting. What possessed you to do this?
Well, it was kind of the perfect match in terms of a story idea for me. First of all, I grew up in Chicago. I'm a Cubs fan. I love baseball. My dad was born in 1908.
And you were a Cubs fan?
I am a Cubs
fan.
Not
that other team?
Yeah, well, no. Okay. The Reds are my second favorite team,
okay.
I should hasten to point out. My dad was actually born in 1908, the same year the Cubs last won the World Series, as irony would have it.
Which is before Wrigley Field.
Yes. And I'm also a political junkie. You know, I mean, that's part of, I'm a lobbyist as part of my role with the Newspaper Association. So to write a sports political thriller involving the Cubs kind of drew in probably the two of the things I'm most interested in.
Well, so it also, if you wanted to project into the future when the Cubs might be in the World Series,
right.
You had to get out of the history business.
Right.
You had to get into the future, so that sort of drives the fiction writing. What was the biggest challenge for you, writing fiction as opposed to writing about things that you could go fact-check?
I would actually say the biggest challenge was writing something that long, you know, like 120,000 words or whatever, and it being in the structure, you know, just the actual structure of it, making the plot work. I think that was the hardest challenge, is making the story work and there's a lot of backstory in it when these main characters are young. The president and the sports radio talk show host are childhood friends with a big secret, and just the structure of the book. That was the most challenging part.
Now, in this particular novel, the person in the White House becomes involved in this whole thing.
Right.
And why is that? Why did you want to get the White House involved? I mean, you can create enough mischief without having the White House involved.
Yeah, it was just more fun to do it that way, and I really wanted to write a book, I mean, quite frankly, that would transcend just you don't have to be a baseball junkie to enjoy the book, or a Cubs fan. In fact, the reviews I get on Amazon, the ones I appreciate the most are the people that say, you know, hey, I wasn't a Cubs fan or even much of a baseball fan, but I learned a lot, that was fun, and I really enjoyed the book. I wanted to write a good story, and that kind of elevated it. And a lot of presidents have been baseball fans. Obama's a White Sox fan, and you can go, you know, back.
William Hart
Nixon.
Taft is the first president to throw out a ball at the beginning of the game. Big baseball fan. He actually played baseball.
So our president grew up as a diehard Cubs fan, and his childhood friend, Bob Walters, who's really the main character in the book, is a very egocentric sports radio talk show host, sort of a Rush Limbaugh-like character.
There aren't many of those around.
No, there couldn't be too many. So, so that's kind of how they got into the plot. And then it escalates, and a lot more is at stake than just them winning the 7th game of the World Series.
Killing the curse. Now, is there a curse?
Well, it depends. You know, I was just listening to Mike and Mike on the way up this morning, and they were arguing about, are there really curses? And, you know, it depends what you believe, but it sure seems that way. There's like Cub-like moments every time they get close to something. And I discovered some in doing the research for the book that I hadn't even known about or that I'd forgotten about, like the black cat that ran around Ron Santo in 1969 when it looked like they were finally going to go with that Leo DeRocher team, and the Gatorade incident on Leon Durham's glove in '84. I mean, there's just so much. It's you know, the most iconic, weird symbol of failure probably in American sports.
Now, you have them playing the Red Sox,
Right.
who have their own set of curses.
Right.
But they've overcome some of those in more recent years. But interesting that you pair these two teams up.
I thought it would be wonderful irony to pair them with, you know, Boston in the World Series. And actually, in the end of the book, in the acknowledgments, I apologize to Red Sox Nation for that. But they've overcome their curse, so they should have a little more of a sense of humor about it, was what I figured.
Yeah.
You know.
So you see, when I set this up, I don't want to give the book away, but I hinted that, you know, the fans really take this on, and this goes well beyond cheering and even arguing with people from the Red Sox. Mm-hmm. This gets into crime, right?
Right, and yeah, it's not giving anything away because you find out very early. The core premise is you've got a fan who's going to do anything to make sure the Cubs win, and it's basically a 3-day story. It starts at the end of Game 6, which the Cubs lose in a very Cub-like way, okay? And then things start happening, escalating, threats to try to put the Cubs in a position where they have to win. And then the president gets dragged in various ways. So it's kind of a 3-day story with, you know, backstories that blend in and out that come to a head in the 7th game. So.
How long ago, for people who don't write books, how long ago did you actually finish the manuscript?
The manuscript was finished about a year ago.
So now that when you go back a year later and you read, you say, oh, that's interesting that I put it together that way.
Yeah, I'm pleased with the structure. I still find typos. You know, I've edited so much copy over the years as a journalist that I still see ways, oh, why did I do that? That's a cliche. I mean, I see all kinds of ways I could have written it better. But I'm overall happy with the way it turned out. And if I do a sequel, which I've started a sequel, I think I can do it a little faster.
Baseball again?
Well, it picks up where this leaves off.
Okay.
So I want to do more. One of the other things that happened was you get really attached to your characters. And I didn't anticipate it being as profound an experience for me, you know, emotionally, and getting attached to the story of the characters. Although a lot of it is about my life growing up in the Chicago suburbs, too. And so I want to do more with a couple of these characters because I think they're interesting people.
Now let's get serious here for a moment, out of the world of fiction.
Sure.
What do you project for the Cubs and your second favorite team for next year? We know it didn't work this year. They're both hanging around the bottom of the conference there.
Well, here's my editorial comments. I'm very disappointed in the Reds, and it was obvious last spring that they needed help on the offense side, and nobody did anything about it, and it became even more obvious as the season unfolded. So it's kind of a tragedy we wasted.
You don't think it's just a matter of people got hurt?
No.
Okay.
No, I agree with Doc at the Inquirer.
Okay.
That, yeah, I think you're dreaming if you think this team, as it's currently constituted, is good enough. The Cubs, you know, you hate to say it because Cub-like things always happen, but these young players they've got are wow players. You know, if they can get some pitching, you never know. We learn as Cub fans, we kind of go through those 7 stages. So, hope springs eternal.
Cub-like things.
Cubs-like things.
Okay. If you'd like baseball politics, psychology. You can download a copy of Killing the Curse digitally, either at Kindle or Nook, or you can get a paperback copy from Amazon or in bookstores that deal with local authors, I think.
Yeah,
right?
you can pre-order at Amazon, and the physical book should be available soon.
Okay, very good. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks very much.
Let's look again ahead to next season. As we always say, either in Cincinnati or Chicago. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week for more election coverage 2014. Have a good week. Sure.